The notification banner lit up my phone screen while I was mid-sip of coffee in my apartment kitchen. Mom's name. I set down the mug and opened the message, expecting another wedding update about tablecloths or centerpieces. Please don't come. The family wants a drama-free wedding. The words didn't register at first. I read them again, slower this time, my brain trying to make them mean something different. Below the message, a small heart icon appeared. Serena had liked it. My sister. The bride. She'd actually liked the message uninviting me from her wedding. My fingers went numb around the phone. The kitchen suddenly felt too bright, the morning sunlight streaming through the window now harsh against my eyes. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, that specific kind of silence that comes right before everything changes. My name is Valentina, I'm 32, and I'm a project manager. This is the story of how I finally stopped managing everyone else's life and started protecting my own. I stared at that little heart next to my mom's message. Not a phone call, not even a conversation, just a text, casual as ordering takeout, telling me I wasn't wanted at an event I'd been funding for 8 months. The event I'd paid $63,000 toward. The event where every single vendor had my credit card on file. I typed back with hands that had gone completely steady. Great choice. Then I added, "You'll be free of my payments too." Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. I need to know I'm not the only one who's ever felt invisible in their own family. Here's what you need to understand about my family. We looked perfect from the outside, the kind of family people complimented at restaurants. My mother, Marissa, carried herself like minor royalty, all carefully styled hair and cutting remarks disguised as helpful suggestions. My father, Edward, perfected the art of being physically present while emotionally checked out, nodding along to whatever kept the peace. And then there was Serena, beautiful in that effortless way some people are, the kind of person who could walk into a room in sweatpants and still command attention. She was 28 but had never really grown out of being the family princess. When she wanted something, she got it. When she made mistakes, they became everyone else's problem to fix. Me? I was the responsible one, the organized one, the one who showed up with spreadsheets and solutions. I didn't mind it for a long time. I actually liked solving problems, making systems work, creating order out of chaos. That's what made me good at my job. But somewhere along the way, reliable became invisible, and I didn't notice until it was too late. When Serena got engaged to Damon last year, my mom called me the same day, not to share the joy, but to ask if I could help coordinate things, since Serena was so overwhelmed with wedding planning. I said yes immediately. Of course I did. That's what I always did. What started as coordination turned into full financial responsibility. The venue deposit, I paid it. The catering down payment, mine. The lighting team, the florist, the decorator, the photographer. Every single invoice landed in my inbox with a quick dot. Can you just handle this? We'll pay you back. That never materialized. 8 months, $63,000. Not one thank you. The only person who ever questioned it was my grandmother, Nadia. She lived in a small house near the beach, filled with plants and old photographs, and the kind of quiet wisdom that only comes from watching the same family patterns repeat for decades. When I'd visit her, she'd make tea and we'd sit in her garden while she trimmed her roses. "They're using you, Mia," she told me once, her weathered hands gentle on the pruning shears. "And you're letting them because you think that's what love looks like." I'd brushed it off. They weren't using me. They were just busy. They needed help. I was capable of giving it. That's what families did, right? But a week before that text arrived, something happened that I couldn't brush off. I'd stopped by my mom's house to drop off the final timeline for the rehearsal dinner. Serena was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Mom was in the kitchen, and I could hear her on a call with someone about the wedding weekend. Apparently, they wanted to add extra pre-wedding events to impress Damon's family. "We'll use Mother's emergency savings," I heard her say. It's just sitting there anyway. I froze in the doorway. She was talking about my grandmother's money, the small fund Nadia had carefully saved over decades, the one she guarded like sacred ground because it meant security, independence, the ability to handle whatever life threw at her without becoming a burden. I walked into the kitchen. "Mom, you can't use Grandma's savings for wedding events." She looked at me like I'd suggested canceling Christmas. "Valentina, don't be dramatic. This is Serena's wedding. It only happens once." "Exactly," I said, my voice tight, "which is why you should be paying for it, not raiding Grandma's emergency fund." Serena appeared in the doorway behind me. "God, Val, why do you always have to make everything so difficult? Grandma doesn't even touch that money." "Because it's hers," I said. "Not yours, not ours, hers." My mother's expression went cold. "We'll discuss this later." But we never did. Instead, a week later, I got that text. The morning after I sent my response about stopping payments, my phone started blowing up. First my mom, then Serena, then even my dad, who never got involved in anything, all calling, texting, leaving voicemails that ranged from confused to angry to something that almost sounded like panic. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up every contract associated with the wedding. Venue agreement signed by me, paid from my account. Catering contract, my name, my credit card, lighting, photography, florals, rentals. Every single agreement was under my authorization. They'd been so confident I'd never stop that they hadn't bothered to put their own names on anything. I started with the venue coordinator, a professional woman named Rebecca, who'd been copied on approximately 700 emails over the past 8 months. "Hi, Rebecca. This is Valentina. I need to cancel our contract and stop all pending payments effective immediately." There was a pause. "Is everything okay? The wedding is in 3 weeks." "The wedding is no longer my responsibility," I said calmly. "Please send me confirmation of cancellation and do not process any additional charges to my account." I made the same call 7 more times. Each vendor expressed concern, confusion, or sympathy, but they all processed the cancellations. By noon, I'd dismantled 8 months of planning in less than 2 hours. My phone buzzed again, another call from my mother. This time, I answered. "What have you done?" Her voice was shrill, higher than I'd ever heard it. "Rebecca just called me saying everything's canceled. The venue, Valentina, 3 weeks before the wedding." "You told me not to come," I said simply, "so I'm not coming. And I'm not funding a wedding I'm not invited to." "You can't do this to your sister." "I'm not doing anything to Serena," I said. "I'm stopping doing everything for her. There's a difference." "This is childish," my mother hissed. "You're being spiteful and selfish and—" "I'm being clear," I interrupted. "You wanted me out of the wedding. I'm out, completely." I hung up before she could respond. The silence that followed felt massive, like I'd stepped into a space that had been empty my whole life, just waiting for me to claim it. That evening, my grandmother called. Her voice was soft, concerned. "Mia, I heard what happened." "From Mom?" "From Serena. She came by crying, saying you'd ruined everything." I closed my eyes. "Did she mention why I'm not invited to her wedding?" "No," Grandma said quietly. "She left that part out." I told her everything. The text, Serena liking it, the conversation about her savings account, all of it. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. "I'm proud of you," she finally said, her voice thick with emotion. "I should have said something sooner. I should have protected you from them." "You tried," I said. "I wasn't ready to hear it." "Are you ready now?" I thought about that text message, about Serena's little heart next to it, about 8 months of being used and dismissed and expected to be grateful for the opportunity. "Yeah," I said, "I'm ready." "Good," Grandma said, "because when they come home from wherever they're hiding, we're going to finish this properly." Serena and my parents had fled to Damon's parents' house upstate. Apparently, the drama of dealing with me was too much to handle locally. They'd been gone for a week when Grandma called with information she'd gotten from a neighbor. They were flying back the next morning, landing at JFK at 11 in the morning. My grandmother's neighbor had overheard my mother on the phone confirming their return flight details. Apparently, she'd been loud enough that anyone nearby could have caught the information. "We should meet them at the airport," Grandma said. "Why?" "Because running away only works if no one's there when you get back." She had a point. I called Mason Hill, a family law attorney I'd consulted about protecting my grandmother's accounts. I explained the situation, the wedding funding, the attempted access to Grandma's savings, the sudden exclusion. He listened without interrupting, then said 4 words that made my spine straighten. "Let me handle this." The next morning, Grandma and I arrived at JFK at 10:30. Mason met us near baggage claim, looking calm and professional in a way that made me feel instantly more grounded. He carried a leather folder under one arm. "They'll probably try to walk past you," he said. "Don't engage emotionally. Let me do the talking." At 11:15, passengers from their flight started filtering through the sliding doors. I saw my mother first. Chin up, shoulders back, her "I'm in control" posture firmly in place. Serena followed, dragging an overstuffed suitcase, her face hidden behind oversized sunglasses. Damon walked beside her, and my dad trailed behind, like always, present but not really there. My mother spotted us and stopped dead. Her expression cycled through confusion, irritation, and something that might have been fear. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "We didn't ask you to pick us up." "We're not here to pick you up," I said evenly. Serena pulled off her sunglasses. "Then why are you here?" Mason stepped forward before I could answer. "Good morning. My name is Mason Hill. I represent Valentina and her grandmother Nadia in a matter requiring your immediate attention." The color drained from my mother's face. "A lawyer? Are you serious right now?" "Completely serious," Mason said, handing her an envelope. "This concerns the financial exploitation related to wedding expenses and the attempted unauthorized access to Nadia's savings account." "Exploitation!" My mother's voice went shrill. "Valentina offered to help. She always helps. This is ridiculous." "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You didn't ask me to help. You expected it. You counted on me never saying no, never setting boundaries, never questioning why I was funding a wedding I wasn't even invited to attend." Serena stepped forward, her face flushing. "You abandoned your responsibilities. You ruined everything just because your feelings got hurt." "My feelings?" I repeated. "Serena, you liked the message uninviting me. You literally gave it a heart. You approved of me being excluded from an event I'd paid $63,000 for." She faltered, her mouth opening and closing. "And you," I turned to my mother, "tried to use Grandma's emergency savings to fund extra wedding events. Money that isn't yours, money she needs." My grandmother's voice cut through the tension, steady and firm. "You told my granddaughter she wasn't welcome at a wedding she made possible. You treated her like an ATM with no feelings, no value beyond what she could provide." People were starting to stare. Other travelers slowed, phones out, watching the scene unfold. My mother hated public attention when she wasn't controlling the narrative. "This is a family matter," she hissed, "not something to discuss with strangers and lawyers in an airport." "You made it a legal matter when you put everything in Valentina's name and then tried to proceed without her consent," Mason said calmly. He pulled out another document. "These are copies of the messages sent to Valentina, including the exclusion text and your daughter's approval of it. And these," he held up more papers, "are records of every payment Valentina made toward the wedding, including vendor contracts that explicitly name her as the responsible party." My mother's hand shook as she took the documents. Mason handed Serena a separate envelope. "This is notice regarding the attempted redirection of your grandmother's emergency fund. an account Valentina has been monitoring as she is the only family member with both access and authorization who has never withdrawn from it without permission. Serena's face went pale. We didn't do anything illegal. You attempted to access funds without the account holder's consent, Mason said. That's legally questionable at best, but more importantly, it demonstrates a pattern of financial exploitation that Valentina is no longer willing to enable. Damon, who'd been silent this whole time, finally spoke. Look, everyone just needs to calm down. This is getting blown out of proportion. My grandmother turned to him, her voice sharp. You encouraged Serena to ask for more. More money, more support, more things she never earned. You're as complicit as they are. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. So what do you want? My mother finally asked, her voice thin. What's it going to take to fix this? I want you to understand that I'm done, I said. Done being your safety net. Done funding your choices without being treated like family. Done pretending that being reliable means being disposable. Serena's voice cracked. So you're punishing us? No, I said. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. Mason stepped in smoothly. Here's what happens next. You have 30 days to respond to these notices. You'll need to address the attempted access to Nadia's account and acknowledge the cancellation of wedding contracts that Valentina funded. Until this is resolved, you are not permitted to access or request access to Nadia's savings. My mother opened the envelope with shaking hands. Her eyes scanned the first page, and her expression crumbled. This could get us in serious trouble. It already did, my grandmother said quietly. For the first time, my mother looked genuinely afraid. Valentina, please, we're family. We can work this out. I met her eyes, feeling nothing but clarity. Family is supposed to protect each other, not just protect themselves at someone else's expense. She didn't have a response to that. My father, who'd been standing there like a ghost, finally spoke. I'm sorry, Val. His voice was barely audible. We should have done better. I should have said something. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from him. I nodded, accepting it without letting it erase everything else. Mason gathered his folders. We're done here. You have the information you need. I suggest you consult your own attorney. My grandmother took my arm and we turned to leave. Wait! My mother's voice stopped us. What are we supposed to do now? I looked back at her. This woman who'd expected me to solve every problem, fund every crisis, show up for every demand, all while treating me like I was the problem. Figure it out, I said, the same way you always expected me to. And then I walked away, not out of anger, but out of freedom. The weeks after the airport were quieter than I expected. No apologetic calls, no attempts at reconciliation, just silence. The wedding was postponed indefinitely. Turns out when you lose your venue, caterer, photographer, and florist 3 weeks before the date, rescheduling isn't simple. I didn't feel guilty. I felt lighter. Mason helped me formalize protections around my grandmother's savings account, adding legal safeguards that prevented anyone but her and me from accessing it. My parents never responded to Mason's formal notices within the 30-day window, but they also never attempted to access the account again. Mason advised that pursuing further legal action would be costly and unnecessary, since the actual goal, protecting my grandmother, had been achieved. No more family emergencies that required raiding her security. Grandma and I started spending more time together. We'd have dinner at her house, sit in her garden, talk about everything except my mother and Serena. She seemed different, more relaxed, less careful with her words, like she'd been holding her breath for years and finally let it out. You saved both of us, she told me one evening, her hand warm on mine. I was so afraid they'd drain everything I had left. I felt powerless to stop them. You're not powerless, I said. Neither of us are, not anymore. I also started volunteering at a local advocacy center that supported older adults, People like my grandmother who needed protection long before anyone noticed, helping them set boundaries, understand their rights, protect their resources. It felt right in a way my old role never had. I wasn't fixing other people's chaos. I was helping people protect themselves from it. My mother finally reached out 6 weeks later, not with an apology, but with a request. They needed to discuss the wedding situation and wanted to meet. I declined. There was nothing to discuss. The wedding had been my responsibility when it benefited them. Now it was their problem to solve. Serena sent me an email 2 months later. It was long, rambling, full of justifications and hurt feelings. She never said, "I'm sorry," but she did say, "I didn't realize," which I guess was as close as she could get. She said they'd rescheduled the wedding for next spring, smaller and simpler. She didn't invite me, which was probably the kindest thing she'd done in years. I didn't respond. From what I heard through mutual acquaintances, they did go through with the wedding that spring, a small ceremony with about 30 guests. They're still married as far as I know, though I have no direct contact with either of them. Looking back, I used to think love meant carrying everything for people who claimed they needed me. I thought being strong meant never saying no, never setting limits, never admitting when I was drowning under the weight of everyone else's expectations. But real love, the kind that heals instead of drains, never asks you to disappear so others can shine. My family's choices didn't define me, my boundaries did. And walking away wasn't the end of something broken. It was the beginning of something honest. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.